We are in Genesis 29, if you can see my board here. Crank it just a tad that way. Of course, we're looking at the patriarchs. We've seen Abraham, then we got all but done with Isaac, his son, and now on to Jacob. And so 29:1, then Jacob went on his journey. Now remember, Mama didn't want him marrying any of those Canaanites or others there, so they sent her and Isaac back to her family in Haran. So Jacob went on his journey. He came to the land of the sons of the east. He looked and saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep were lying there beside it. For from that well they watered the flocks. Now the stone was on the mouth of the well. It was large. Now, through my study, I always wondered, why would they cover a well? Well, sandy, dry land, get sandstorms, so it was to keep the sand from going down in it, probably keep animals from falling down in it, and just kind of to protect the water, because it was a rare commodity in that area of the world. Verse 3, when all the flocks were gathered there, they would then roll a stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place on the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, my brothers, where are you from? And they said, we're from Haran. He said to them, do you know Laban the son of Nahor? And they said to him, we know him. Now, Laban's father was not Nahor, that was his grandfather. And so his father was Bethuel, whose father was Nahor, who was the brother of Abraham. All right, just so we got that. But that's how they would often refer to the son of. It might have been grandson, great-grandson, great-great-grandson, a descendant, when they say son of. 6. He said to them, is it well with him? And they said, it is. Here's Rachel, his daughter, coming with the sheep. Very common for the daughters or ladies to be shepherdess. He said, behold, it is still high day. It's not time for the livestock to be gathered. Water the sheep and go to pasture them. But they said, we cannot until all the flocks are gathered. And they rolled the stone from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep. While he was still speaking with him, Rachel came up with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. It came about when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went up, and he himself rolled this very large stone from the mouth of the well and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted his voice and wept. Now the kiss was not on the lips, but probably on the cheek. It was a custom how they would greet one another, and she's family. 12. Jacob told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. So it came about when Laban heard the news of Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him, and he embraced him and kissed him on the cheeks, and brought him into his house. Then he related to Laban all these things, and Laban said to him, surely you are my bone and my flesh, and he stayed with him about a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be? Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Now Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful of form and face. I learned something interesting. I always wondered, what do they mean by weak eyes? You ever seen somebody from the Middle East? What color are their eyes? Brown, dark brown. They say hers were either a light brown or maybe even a blue. Which, if you're used to seeing dark brown eyes, you see blue eyes, she has weak eyes. Kind of makes sense. So that is a possibility, what they mean by weak eyes. Jacob, verse 18, loved Rachel. Kind of loved at first sight, I guess. So he said, I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter, Rachel. Now, Laban said, it's better that I give her to you than to give her to another man. Stay with me. So he served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of his love for her. Now, I wrote down, here's the names of who we're looking at tonight. Of course, Jacob, Leah, Zilpah, her maid, Rachel, and Bilhah, her maid. And the great deceiver, Jacob, is about to be greatly deceived. So, 21. Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife. He served 7 years, for my time is completed. Now I may go into her. Laban gathered all the men of the place and made a feast. Now it came about in the evening that Laban took his daughter Leah, the oldest, and brought her to him, and Jacob went into her. Laban also gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maid. So it came about in the morning, and behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, what is this you've done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? Why then have you deceived me? Laban said, it is not the practice of our place to marry off the younger before the firstborn. The question that's always been presented is, how do you know it wasn't Leah? Or how do you know it wasn't Rachel instead of Leah? I mean, they're gone through the ceremony and wedding night, and it's not till the next morning. Well, one, during the ceremony, she would have had a very thick, heavy veil. Couldn't see her face. And they didn't have these things at nighttime. It was dark. And so, couldn't tell. Sisters tend to look a lot alike. Not always, but often. If they had a very similar shape, height, he would not have known until daylight. So, verse 27. Of course, Jacob's upset. Laban, his now father-in-law, says, well, complete the week of this one, wedding week, and we'll give you the other also for service which you shall serve with me for another 7 years. He just got tricked. Jacob did so and completed her week, and he gave him his daughter Rachel as his wife. So it's like married 1 week and then married again the next week. Laban also gave his maid Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her maid. So Jacob went into Rachel. Also, indeed, he loved Rachel more than Leah, and he served Laban for another 7 years. 14 years for 2 brides. 31. Now the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, and he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So Leah conceived and bore a son, and named him Reuben, for she said, because the Lord has seen my affliction, surely now my husband will love me. And so Reuben means, look, a son. And so Reuben is the first son. Spelled it wrong. It's R-U-R-E-U, right? Yep. So you got Reuben. I might as well move one of us over here. Let's see. Then verse 33, she conceived again, bore a son, and said, because the Lord has heard that I am unloved, he has therefore given me this son. So she named him Simeon. So number 2. Simeon's name means hearing. God heard her. So then we go on to verse 34. She conceived again, bore a son, and said, now this time my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore she named him Levi. So now we're down to number 3. And Levi's name means attachment. Now notice you've got look a son, hearing, and attachment. Names meant something back then. And for Leah, she's naming her sons these because she's unloved by her husband. But she's hoping that by having sons, her husband will love her. Then we get to the fourth one. She conceived again, bore a son, and said, "This time I will praise the Lord." Therefore she named him Judah, and then she stopped bearing children. So number 4 is Judah. She's like, I hope my husband loves me, and then she praises God. What do we know about Judah? Or how about Judah's descendants?
You got Israel and you got Judah.
Right. But who's the line of Judah? None of these say it. Through Judah comes Jesus. Through Judah, you're going to go down to David. From David, of course, to Jesus. He is the Lion of Judah. Jesus is one of the names as he's referred to. Why? Well, partly because his name means praise, or she praised the Lord when she gave birth to him. All right, chapter 30, verse 1. Now when Rachel, the one who is loved, saw that she bore Jacob no children, she became jealous of her sister and said to Jacob, "Give me children or else I'll die." She's desperate because, I've said this before, women in this day, in this area, that was their number one job, was to bear children, especially a son, for their husband. Well, I would say a minimum of 5 years has passed with these first 4, and Rachel's not had any children. So, of course, Jacob, verse 2, his anger burned against Rachel. He says, "Am I in the place of God, who's withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" She said, "Then here is my maid Bilhah. Go unto her, that she may bear on my knees, that through her I too may have children." And so, being on her knees is a sign that she acknowledges that child of her handmaid as her own. So, she gave him to her maid Bilhah as a wife. Jacob went into her. Bilhah conceived and bore a son. Bore Jacob a son. Rachel said, "God has vindicated me and has indeed heard my voice and given me a son." Therefore, she named him Dan. So, number 5 over here is Dan, meaning justice. Justice, she thought, had been served because of that. When Leah saw that, let's see, so I skipped one. Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, "With mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister and have indeed prevailed." And she named him Naphtali, meaning wrestling. All right, see if I can get verse 6 spelled right here. Naphtali. Wrestling. Now, verse 9. When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took her maid Zilpah, right here, and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and Leah said, "How fortunate!" So she named him Gad. He's the 7th one. Gad means luck or fortune. Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Leah said, "Happy am I, for women will call me happy." So she named him Asher, and guess what Asher means? Happy. So he's got 8 children by 3 women so far. This is verse 14. Now in the days of the wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, is it a small matter for you to take my husband? And would you take my son's mandrakes also? So Rachel said, therefore he may lie with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes. So 8 children, 8 to 10 years at this point. Still, Rachel had no children. And so the other 3 have, but Rachel's the only one who has not. So verse 16, Jacob came in from the field evening, excuse me, then Leah went out to meet him and said, you must come in to me, for I surely hired you with my son's mandrakes. So he lay with her. God gave heed to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a 5th son. And Leah said, God has given me my wages because I gave my maid to my husband. So she named him Issachar, and Issachar means, where is Issachar? Reward. So he has number 9. Issachar, meaning reward. 19, Leah conceived again and bore a 6th son to Jacob. Leah said, God has endowed me with a good gift. Now my husband will dwell with me because I have borne him 6 sons. So she named him Zebulun, meaning dwelling. Every time I hear the name Zebulun, I always think of the Waltons. Grandpa, Zeb, that was his name, Zebulun. 21, afterwards she bore a daughter named Dinah. So we believe that there was more daughters born to Jacob. She's the only one named. And that's kind of for a foretelling of what's going to happen to her down the road. She bore Dinah. And God remembered, verse 22, and God remembered Rachel. She's the only one who has not had a child. And gave heed to her and opened her womb. And she conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. She named him Joseph, saying, may the Lord give me another son. So finally, the 11th child or son born to Jacob is Joseph, and we know later on Benjamin is born to Rachel. Of course, she dies in childbirth. Verse 25. Now it came about when Rachel had borne Joseph that Jacob said to Laban, send me away that I may go to my own place and to my own country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you. Let me depart, for you yourself know my service which I have rendered you. But Laban said to him, if it now pleases you, stay with me. I have divined that the Lord has blessed me on your account. He continued, name me your wages, and I will give it to you, and I will give it. But he said to him, you yourself know I have served you, and how your cattle have fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased to a multitude. And the Lord has blessed you wherever I turn. But now, when I shall provide for my own household, but now when should I provide for my own household also? 31, so he said, what shall I give you? And Jacob said, you shall not give me anything, if you will do this one thing for me. I will again pasture and keep your flock. Let me pass through your entire flock today, removing there every speckled and spotted sheep, and every black one among the lambs, and the spotted and the speckled among the goats. And such shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later when you come concerning my wages. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the lambs, if found with evil, will be considered stolen. So Laban said, good, let it be according to your word. Sounds like a good deal to him. So he removed on that day the striped and spotted male goats and all the speckled and spotted female goats, every one with white in it, and on the black ones among the sheep, and gave them to the care of his sons. He put some distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob. And Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. Then Jacob took fresh rods, a poplar and almond and plane trees, and peeled white strips from them, exposing the white which is in the rods. He set the rods which he had peeled in front of the flocks, in the gutters, even in the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink. And they mated when they came to drink. So the flocks mated by the rods, and the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. Jacob separated the lambs and made the flocks face forward, and striped all the black in the flock of Laban, and he put his own herds apart and did not put them in Laban's flock. Moreover, it came about whenever a stronger of the flock were mated, that Jacob would place the rods inside their flock in the gutters, so that they might mate by the rods. But when the flock was feeble, he did not put them in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. Again, he's doing a little deceiving. So the man became exceedingly prosperous, and had large flocks and female and male servants, and camels and donkeys. Heard the saying, what goes around comes around? Jacob got deceived with his wives, and now he's doing it again to his father-in-law. And we're going to stop there. But it seems as though Laban, of course, a little lazy, lets Jacob do all the work, cheats him, not only with his wives, but if you read ahead, he's cheating him in his wages. He keeps changing them and so forth. But Jacob is following God. God said, if you follow me, and all this will be yours, and I'll take care of you. But it's interesting, or always is to me, how here we have the children of Jacob by 4 different women. And of course, this is what becomes the nation of Israel, the 12 tribes. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Gad, Asher, Dan, Naphtali, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin become the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, they're not tribes yet, but this is all a part of God's plan. It's hard to see what God's doing in our own lives when we look forward. It's when we look back we can see where God was working in our lives. I find it hard to believe that at this point, when Jacob first marries Leah and then Rachel, knew he was going to have 12 sons that were going to become 12 tribes, and etc. and so forth. But by the time he dies, he saw God's hand in doing all of this. And of course, the last of the patriarchs, we've got Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the last is known as Joseph, Jacob's favorite son. So, any questions about any of this tonight? All right, how about prayer needs or praises or anything? Of course, if you didn't get the message, Frances Johnson did pass away. I think it was yesterday evening that she passed. Funeral arrangements are, and there'll be another message coming out tomorrow to correct it. Visitation, everything's at Forbes and Dick.